Hello, and good Monday morning to you all. Over the last several months, gold obviously has done very well. And even since our most recent video, that was on the 8th of October, talking about this bull flag formation on GDX, following that bull flag, GDX has indeed rallied over 14% into that most recent top. Since then though, over the last few days, GDX has declined, so perhaps it's a good time to have a look at the outlook for precious metals in general. Welcome to myfinanceteacher.org, where after a bit of a tricky intermediate cycle low over here into late June, after all that intermediate cycle correction, that intermediate cycle decline was very mild, hence somewhat tricky. Usually we see a stronger decline down into the intermediate cycle low. So after a bit of a tricky decline over here, we have been following this rally quite fruitfully. As a couple of examples of recent videos, in the middle of August we talked about this breakout above 2470, and since then we've also, as I mentioned, talked about this bull flag formation into early October. But while this rally has been quite enjoyable over the last few months, gold is, to be honest, getting into overbought area. Specifically, we see that on the price chart itself, gold is showing negative divergence on the RSI. Negative divergence, as I've mentioned many times in my video, is a situation when price is showing you higher highs while RSI is showing you lower highs. That's especially interesting when RSI's highs are in overbought area. That's exactly what we've seen since sort of the end of September. Zooming in though, yes, gold is somewhat overbought, perhaps not extremely overbought. Zooming in, perhaps you could make a case for some sort of a triangle consolidation here. That's probably a bit more visible if you go to 4-hour chart. But usually, despite being overbought, usually triangle consolidations are a continuation pattern, meaning that we look at what's price been doing before that consolidation, and in 70% chances a continuation is likely. Of course, there is no guarantee in any of this. So while there is a bit of a chance for gold perhaps to give us another, that would be a repeated poke above these very wide Bollinger Bands, I suppose quite a bit of caution is advised around here, or perhaps over the next week or so. After all, while in the short term gold still looks quite attractive, zooming out a little, let's have a look at all of these intermediate cycles in gold, all the way since the pandemic low in early 2020. We've seen several intermediate cycles already, and since then gold price has actually rallied from around 1400 at that pandemic low. So all of this period is somewhat of a stronger period. So we are comparing to a relatively strong benchmark, and the average intermediate cycle rallies over this period have produced a gain of about 19%. The current one has already produced 20% since that most recent late June intermediate cycle low. So yes, we are extremely unusually high versus that average of 19%. For example, if you look at this May rally, the middle of 2020 rally, it produced 42% rally. Wouldn't that be amazing if we see gold continue higher until this intermediate cycle rally produces a 40% gain? That would bring us much closer to $3,000 on gold, and that's not impossible. Nobody does know the future. But again, we are comparing against a relatively strong benchmark here. Within this period, gold, while has consolidated for quite a while, it still rallied from around 1400 to nearly 2800 to over 2700. So that's nearly a double. And we're now above the average gain of these intermediate cycle rallies. So again, as I mentioned, if not now, over the next 1, maybe 2 weeks, quite a bit of caution is advised. Now let's have a quick look at GDX, that miners ETF. We see that all the way during this intermediate cycle rally, while gold has been rallying within that new intermediate cycle, GDX has generally been in this rising channel with the most recent spike breakout out of this channel, serving more as a bit of a bull trap rather than a breakout in earnest, as we've seen GDX decline down into that middle of the Bollinger Bands only a couple of days after that breakout. So that is a bit of a concern. What do I expect in the very short term in GDX? Perhaps a bit of a disbelief rally, test that upper range of this channel before perhaps a decline down into the daily as well as very likely intermediate cycle low. After all, the daily cycle has been going on for 19 days for now. If we extend it into another 1 or 2 weeks, that will give us nearly a month-old daily cycle. Usually these daily cycles last for about a couple of months. Sometimes they are quite a bit shorter, sometimes they are quite a bit longer, but that would be close enough to the midpoint, meaning that perhaps we might be close enough to the top of that daily cycle. And as for the intermediate cycle, for now it's 142 days old. If we extend that by another 1 or 2 weeks, that's 130, 140 days long. Usually these intermediate cycles last for an average of around half a year. So we're quite a bit past the average midpoint. Hence a bit of a decline, a bit of a cool down into the intermediate cycle low, that's the end of the cycle, is quite likely perhaps over the next several months. Hence, as I've mentioned already a few times, there are quite a few signs suggesting you to be somewhat cautious in precious metals. Let's have a look at yet another sign over here. This is gold optics, optimism on gold, optimism index on gold. And usually even a relatively strong rally into the top of the intermediate cycle gets excessively overbought. That's when the market is excessively optimistic, when this optimism index is above the level of 80. Look at this mid-2020 rally out of that pandemic low, that 42% rally, a very strong rally, brought this optimism index all the way up to 84. Recently, we've matched that. That was several weeks ago. Since then, we see a lower high on the optics, higher high on price. Again, same as with RSI, that is a bit of a negative divergence. Again, there are no guarantees, of course. Nobody does know the future, but those often do come with a bit of a cool down afterwards. And lastly, let's have a look at silver. Since that early August intermediate cycle low in silver, it's been sort of catching up with gold. In the short term, silver is often more volatile than gold, but in the longer term, it's a bit of a mix between industrial and precious metals. For example, if you look at a very long-term chart, say a monthly chart, you'd see that gold, while it's already creating new highs, silver is still far from its all-time highs of $50 or so. Currently, silver at over $33 per ounce. So coming back to the daily chart though, as in the short term, silver is usually a bit more volatile than gold. There is a chance that this is a bit of a bull flag. Again, as I mentioned, as gold pokes once more through that wide Bollinger Bands, perhaps silver is going to do something similar here, continue this bull flag, a bit of more volatility compared to gold, maybe get to 37, wouldn't that be nice, before the correction takes place. And that correction down into the intermediate cycle low, wherever it takes place, perhaps closer to the 200-day moving average, will be an ideal time to reaccumulate some of the, perhaps some of the ETFs that you like, or perhaps some of the miners that you are interested in. Talking about those miners, for an exclusive insight into some of the juniors that will provide that additional torque to your portfolio into the next intermediate cycle rally, make sure to join us at myfinanceteacher.org and go to this juniors in metals category. As an example of one of those juniors we discuss at myfinanceteacher.org, and actually this example has been featured on YouTube as well. That was in early May, exactly on the 6th of May, when we featured that video on Dolly Varden. That's a very nice junior. And since that video, into the most recent top, Dolly Varden has actually made a 68% gains. And beyond Dolly Varden, there are heaps of very promising juniors within this category at myfinanceteacher.org. So make sure to join us. Beyond that, most recently I've just published the most detailed nickel report you can find on the internet. So if you do want to support the channel, if you like my videos, make sure to join us, where I do provide a lot of value in return. For now though, let me wish you a productive Monday. Have a nice day. Bye bye.